Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Pete, Films and Stuff, we are back for a super huge mega episode today. Let's call it a blockbuster episode in honor of our first summer block office film, Top Gun Maverick.
That's right. My namesake is back on the big screen after 36 years.
Has it been 36 years? 1986. Wow.
36 years. And I mean, we were still in it couldn't have been like more than elementary or maybe middle school when this movie first came out.
So, yeah, I think first of all, that, I don't know if they keep records, but that must be a record for the longest period of time between a first movie and a sequel, right?
It's so funny you say that because just about a half hour ago, I read an article that actually said exactly the same thing, which is that even though they don't keep a specific record, according to maybe IMDb or whatever movie sites, this is one of, if not the oldest sequels, as in, the longest years gap between one and two.
And then the second thing you said, which is absolutely right, which is the gap has been so long that you and I were boys.
Yeah.
I mean, we were like, for sure, we were not driving age. We were kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we saw this movie. And to be honest, I mean, there's a whole generation of people who were born, like a long time after that, who have maybe seen the original, but honestly didn't kind of have the same upbringing with that as, kind of their reference point in pop culture. And I guess that's probably our first point, which is, what did you think of the movie in terms of the story and in terms of drawing in some inspiration from the original?
I thought this movie was awesome. Honestly, there's very few other words that are appropriate. Awesome is definitely the way to go. And I do mean that in the actual meaning of the word awesome, as in it inspired awe in me. It generated a serious sense of awe. I also think that this movie doesn't just cement, because I think Tom Cruise has done a really good job of cementing himself as an action and movie star in the past. But I think this movie really confirms that he's possibly one of the last remaining movie stars. And I mean that with, like a capital M, capital S. Everybody else of his era has either slowed down or has moved on to different kinds of roles. And they certainly don't make movies like this anymore. And by that, I mean to say, this is let's say this is like the platonic ideal of a summer blockbuster movie. Yeah. Right? It's a nameless foe. It's a faceless villain, good guys, montages, kick-ass rock music, suspense, thriller, all rolled into one. And not even that long, by the way. I think it was just under or just over 2 hours long.
Oh, yeah.
It was, you were in and out, right? It's not a marathon like you would have expected.
Mm-hmm. There's something you said about Tom Cruise, which is, you mentioned it's 36 years between these films. When you watched this film, you certainly believed that he was still Captain Pete Mitchell. You did not feel like he was Tom Cruise playing an aviator. You didn't feel like it was Tom Cruise playing a pilot. You really felt that he played this role. And for me, that's incredible that he could play the young Maverick and the old Maverick, each really equally believable. I have to say, whatever people's opinions of Tom Cruise are, as an actor, I thought that was just exceptional, that he really made us believe that he was still Maverick. And that, I think, goes to absolutely your point about this being an awesome movie. it was a pretty good way for them to say, hey, what does a world look like? What is Maverick like? What are Iceman? What's the Navy like right now? How should this story take place and unfold? And I thought, actually, it really made a lot of sense.
Yeah. And speaking of Iceman, by the way, that was such a good, almost perfect use of Val Kilmer, not just
Absolutely.
as Iceman, but Val Kilmer as a man, right?
Yeah.
A man who's struggling. He's got cancer right now. He's not in the peak of his health as he was when he filmed the first Top Gun. But what a great way, super respectful way of showing that he's still the Iceman, and he looked good. Say what you will, like there have been some pictures out there where he hasn't looked that great, but he looked really, really good in this, and I was so happy to see him.
I agree. I think that's an exceptional way that they worked Iceman back into the film, which is, it makes sense that if you look at what would have happened in 36 years, that those two would have maintained a friendship, that they would have had mutual respect. Of course, Kazansky went on to have a decorated military career. Of course, Cruise can't get promoted and is still kind of living as a irresponsible young fighter pilot. It really made sense how that whole thing unfolded. When I saw it, I'm like, yeah, of course that's how it would have happened, Yeah. It didn't seem forced. It didn't seem like the token cameo. It was like really, really on point how those two would have developed, like mutual admiration over the years. I was thrilled with it. Yeah. Really, really thrilled with it.
And what I really liked was that, even though there's that gap in, physical ability, and, he's also got in the movie as well, Val Kilmer, and Iceman is shown to be ill. I really liked that, he's not able to speak, right? I mean, also I think apparently in real life, but like in this movie, the premise is that he's unable to speak because of his cancer. And it's so genuine. That moment felt so genuine and heartfelt when he says, can we admit that I'm the better fighter pilot now? Yeah. And he goes, let's not, and Tom Cruise just goes, let's not ruin this nice moment. It was just such a simple line. It really, it didn't elevate it. It lightened the mood considerably. Yeah. I really liked that. I thought it was very good.
I agree. Tell me what you thought about the rest of the cast before we go into the story and the plot. What did you think about how everyone else was cast?
So in terms of casting, I liked it. I thought that, I really thought that Rooster and Hangman, I really hope they don't do this, but it clearly looked like they were setting them up to be the next Maverick and Iceman.
Yeah,
which is to say that they were butting heads a lot, but then of course by the end of the movie they kind of have a common respect for each other. Yeah. I don't want them to continue on with this because this really, Top Gun for me is very much a Tom Cruise franchise. It's not a franchise that, you can kind of pawn off to the next generation, especially given the premise of the movie, at least the initial kickoff premise of the movie, which is to say that, fighter pilots are kind of a dying breed now, right? So I did like the casting. I thought Phoenix was pretty good, but I felt like they were all good or adequate, but there wasn't anyone that was particularly amazing or particularly bad. And of course, there was a little bit of a focus on Rooster, which is Miles Teller's character, because obviously he's Goose's son.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let's take it from the top. What did you think of Jennifer Connelly as Penny, the love interest of Maverick?
So
I thought that was a great cast, right?
Great cast, relatively age appropriate.
Yep.
And, in terms of casting, I think, or in terms of her role or function, I think she served it perfectly.
And real chemistry. It seemed like that was genuine chemistry. Probably better chemistry than the original
Kelly McGinnis,
which was a little bit just kind of like put the older woman and the younger man, and it seemed like more of a sexual attraction than kind of like, a like some type of chemistry, Yeah. Okay, so Jennifer Connelly I thought was exceptional.
But let's be fair. I think Jennifer Connelly would have chemistry with anyone. She's awesome.
She's lovely. She's lovely. Yeah. Val Kilmer, we said, was exceptional. Miles Teller as Goose's son, solid.
Very solid.
Yeah, I think very solid.
Yeah.
John Hamm, Cyclone.
Yeah,
I thought John Hamm was very good. Yeah.
Yeah, your stereotypical bad guy commander who's not really a bad guy, but he's the guy who's kind of like puts his foot on the back of everyone to kind of get them in gear.
Yep. And then Charles Parnell as Warlock, kind of the sidekick to John Hamm.
Yeah.
I thought he was exceptional as well, right? Very well cast.
Yep.
And the rest of the team, I agree. I liked Phoenix. I liked Payback. I liked Hangman. The rest of them were
Bob was okay, and then everybody else was kind of
okay.
And then everybody else was really, I think, filler. In my opinion, they were
agree.
filler. Out of the 12 pilots that they hired for the mission, I would say 4, maybe 5 of them really had any screen time and some lines. The rest of them were just there to kind of be, you knew they were going to be cannon fodder, as in they weren't going to be hired to go on the main mission.
Yeah. So now, how did you feel about the story? I mean, for sure, this is a feel-good, exciting, adrenaline movie. A little bit of humor, not so much. How did you actually feel about like the story and the plot?
And I don't mean this in a bad way, even though it's going to sound that way. This felt like a very retro, throwback 80s era plot and movie. Mm-hmm. And for me, that actually serves this movie very well. Which is to say, this is a very pro-America, gung-ho, America, F yeah, feel-good army/navy/armed forces/military movie. What I liked was that there is a bad guy, but the bad guy is nameless and faceless. It's, there's no nations attached to
Anonymous country.
There's nothing like that because, and that would have taken away from it. Honestly, it would have taken away because that's something you would have expected out of the 80s, right? You would have said, we're going after Iran, we're going after Iraq, we're going after Russia. The very Rambo gung-ho mentality. Right? Yes. And in this one, they're just saying, look, it's a nameless, anonymous, no-named country. Yeah. Even the jets are fifth-generation fighters, right? We don't even know. Yeah. We're flying old-school F-18s, right? So it's in that way, it was, the bad guy was as generic as possible, right? It was just generic, mustache-twirling bad guy. And generally speaking, I'm a person who thinks that a good bad guy elevates the movie. But in this case, you didn't need it because the good bad guy is just there to be killed. It's not there to, they don't serve a function in terms of advancing the plot. That really the mission is kind of like an afterthought. It's not really the main plot of the movie.
Yeah, I thought they did a very good job of de-escalating that aspect so that it didn't overpower, the idea of the mission. And this is where I have to really compliment the trailer because I thought remember the old style trailers? They basically gave away the movie. They basically summarized the movie chronologically with a narrator telling you what the movie was to the point that you didn't really need to see the movie. Now trailers have evolved where this trailer was so good, and you and I have discussed it more than once, that I kind of said, I don't want to see the trailer because I feel like it's giving me spoilers. And I have to say, I am thrilled and grateful that this trailer actually didn't give away any plot. It almost did. It hid the plot so well that I was really, really happy that what I saw from the trailer didn't at all tell me what was happening. Although there were some things I was kind of like guessing, and in some cases I guessed wrong. But I thought the trailer did a great job of not disclosing the plot to me. when you say like it's an 80s plot, I get you. And I think that it was important for this film to have kind of the framework that it did, because it needs to get you kind of from point A to point B, do a little bit of nostalgia for you and I and our generation. At the same time, some of those throwbacks, although they were a little bit egregious, some of those throwbacks in footage were obviously meant to draw in a younger audience who hasn't seen the original Top Gun, to put some context into who is Goose, what was the relationship of Goose, why is this such a big deal, and so forth. I think it's hard for them to have constructed this movie any other way, although I felt, if we're really picking at it, that they painted it on a little bit thick in some cases. But overall, I think it was necessary to kind of, weld these two films together.
Yes. And I agree with you in terms of, some of the slow motion flashbacks, that we see of Goose, especially like when he's ejecting. Yeah. And it seemed jarring because, of course, back in the 80s, the effects, the visual effects, even in the practical effects, were nowhere near as good. So it just looked kind of silly. Like if you look now at something like that, it would look kind of silly to see someone kind of just bonk his head against the canopy of the jet, and then expect us to believe that he died because of that. It just seems silly, right? Yeah. But you're absolutely right. It has to be shown because there aren't that many Petes and Ethans, or rather there are going to be lots of Petes and Ethans watching this movie, but you also want the younger generation who haven't seen the first movie to really be interested or to at least understand why there's conflict. And I will say, in terms of conflict, I liked that little bit of bait and switch. So there was a little bit of expectation, because in the trailer, you got the feeling that there was going to be, and maybe this, we can start diving a little deeper now. So in the trailer, we saw that we expected that the conflict between Rooster and Maverick. So this is Rooster, just for context. And again, spoiler alert. Rooster is Goose's son. Goose was Maverick's co-pilot / navigator in Top Gun 1, played by Anthony Edwards. Anthony
Edwards.
And
Dr. Green from ER.
And so Maverick, even after this 30 years, can't forgive himself because he believes that Goose died because of him, because he was being reckless. There's a certain element of truth to that. But so he still holds himself responsible for this kid's father's dying. And I expected that, based on the trailer, I thought that the conflict was really going to be between the two of them because of the father dying. Yeah. And that's really, I thought that was where the emotional thing was going to be. And in reality, it turns out that there's conflict because Maverick made a promise to Rooster's mom that she wouldn't let his son, Rooster, go into the Naval Academy to become a Top Gun pilot. So he pulls his papers from the Naval Academy, and obviously that was the source of conflict, is that sets Rooster back 4 years, right? And you can, whether you see it or not, they all look young. It was a bit of a silly bait and switch, but I like that it wasn't just going to be a generic, oh, my father died because of you kind of thing, because that's also almost hard to believe that, in 2 hours you're going to rectify that situation.
Kinda. I guess it, I agree. You've got 2 hours. There's no quick fix, but I kind of felt like that was unnecessary. It just felt like, in the course of the movie, it's okay. But when you just kind of think about it, for me, it doesn't really sit right. I don't like the idea that, Goose's wife, right, was played by Meg Ryan in the original, went to Maverick and said, "Hey, Maverick, I'm dying. Don't let my son be a pilot." Basically sabotage his career because I don't want him to be a pilot like his father. And Maverick's like, you know what? I will do this for you. That's what you want? Go, I'll do it. I'll go screw your son's career. I don't think the mom would do that. And I don't think Maverick would do that. So for me, the whole thing was just kind of like, I didn't really feel right about it. But I agree that it was intended to kind of create an additional layer of conflict, between those two. But then another thing about Rooster, or maybe two things if you don't mind, really bothered me about Rooster. I mean, I like that he chose the name Rooster. Yeah, kind of like a similar, bird. Non-flying bird,
fowl family.
like goose, right? Yeah, I mean, they definitely made Rooster very much like Goose, with the Hawaiian shirt,
mustache.
With the mustache. I like the mustache. The aviators playing the piano, the same song. I just kind of felt like they really, really pushed him into that same mold. And I guess I get it, but I felt like they didn't need to do it so much so. He followed his father into the Navy. He wanted to be a pilot. Goose wasn't a pilot, by the way. Goose was the navigator, that's right. He was the communications guy. So I just kind of felt like they really pushed him a little bit too hard to do exactly what exactly Goose's footsteps. I'm a little bit surprised that they did that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, to be honest. I thought there were other small things that were obviously not film related. Did you notice that everybody in every scene was sweating profusely or glistening?
Lot of sweat. But the original Top Gun, which I watched the night before to prep myself because I do my homework for films and stuff. Actually, in that movie, everyone
were they
is
sweating.
Really?
I don't remember.
Someone took a mister. And they misted those guys every single scene. They're sitting in some conference room in a aircraft carrier. They're all
they must
sweating.
Have it was good $10 million of the budget must have just been for oil and water misting for these guys. Because no matter where they were glistening and glowing and shiny because they were just covered in sweat or oil of some kind.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
What I thought was really funny is that, and I don't know if this was intentional or if it was, perspective of the camera, but clearly Miles Teller is a good 6 inches taller, maybe long, even more so than Tom Cruise. And depending,
I think they did that.
There's definitely scenes where you can see that height difference. But if you look at it, so if you see shots where you're looking, and I can't remember which is which. Okay. So there was a scene where, they're in this unnamed territory and it's snowing and you see behind from Tom Cruise's, through Tom Cruise's eyes to Miles Teller, he's looking up at him and there's a massive difference. Yeah. But then immediately you see the other way around and all of a sudden they're eye level. And I'm just like, wait, what just happened? Yeah. It was just, and because the height gap is startling enough that you're just like, something's a little off there.
That's kind of every Tom Cruise movie. That's kind of every Tom Cruise movie though. And there should be, if there's not already, probably some blog or something that points it out kind of in every movie. That's just one of the tricks they have to do, especially when he was with Nicole Kidman and in Vanilla Sky when he was with whatever that lady's
Cameron
name
Diaz?
is. That's Cameron Diaz. That's just kind of I guess par for the course.
I don't know. I really, really, really think that those quibbles that I have for this movie are relatively small. And the quibbles that I have are also quibbles that don't hold me back from enjoying it. There are other movies where, you've heard it on here, right? We've quibbled a lot about a lot of films. But when it comes to this movie, and it's not that I'm giving it a free pass, but I'm kind of giving it a free pass.
I agree.
There was a lot to like. The sound effects were unbelievable when they actually do the mission, or even before when Tom Cruise has to prove to the entire Top Gun Academy and to Cyclone that he can do that this mission can be done the way he wants to get it done. And really the music cuts out. You just hear his breathing through the cockpit. the sound, like I had literal chills going through me. And this is, a testament also as to why you must see this in the cinema, because this is one of the few movies where I promise you, I don't care if you have your own cinema at home, unless you have a THX certified sound system and a video system, you are just not going to be able to replicate it. The bass boost, the jet thrusts, everything. It was stunning.
Yeah.
It was really, really, really stunning.
I agree.
I also...
So I agree.
Sorry, I just want to say last thing. I really liked that everything was practical. If there was any CGI, it was so good that I didn't really notice it. There was maybe one thing that I thought was CGI, but everything was killer practical effects. And from what I understood, the in-cockpit video scenes were actually the cameras were all set up by the individual actors. So the director had no control, and he didn't know what they were filming until they came back and landed on the ground. That's how, so like they all set up, I guess, their own GoPros or whatever they were using in their cockpits to film the in-jet scenes.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I think that in terms of the storyline, I thought this was super, super enjoyable film. I didn't have anything that made me dislike the movie. Although I have to say, like, there were just a few things that I'm wondering why there was, I wish there would have been less, plot friction. For example, I think it's very curious that Hangman, right, played by Glenn Powell, who I thought played that role very, very well. And as you mentioned, was kind of supposedly like the Iceman of this class, right? Very polished, doesn't make mistakes, very, very, obviously a little bit arrogant, but obviously, he's not reckless in his flying. I thought it's very strange that he, who is obviously portrayed as the best pilot in that class, wasn't chosen for the mission. Instead, they chose Rooster, who by all metrics, apart from Tom Cruise kind of having some personal affinity for him as Goose's son, clearly was not the most skilled pilot in that class, right? So I thought that was a really, really, that's just kind of like cinema, but I thought that didn't really make sense. And I was thinking about this, and what I came up with, and I wish they would have done instead, was said, hey, look, Rooster, you're too slow in flying this approach, right? You're not going to make it. You're still very, very talented. Your dad wasn't a pilot. He was a navigator. He was a communications expert. Why don't you, maybe we're having a problem, with scoping up the targets. Maybe our guy who's responsible for using the eye, to set down the firing path, for this target isn't a good enough pilot to do that. Bob. Why don't we put you? Yeah. And I thought that would have made more sense to include him on the mission. It really kind of irked me that the guy who is clearly the best wasn't chosen, and the guy who is clearly the worst was chosen. That seems strange to me. Did you feel it? And then the second part that I really kind of wish was adjusted was kind of the last action sequence where we all felt like, Cruise, Rooster, obviously being chased down by the superior aircraft. It didn't seem like they were going to make it. We all kind of knew help was on the way, and then they were climbing and, Cruise said, eject, grab the handles. And obviously there's so many parallels to the original ejection scene, in where, Goose passed away. And then out of nowhere, of course, there comes Hangman, shoots down the jet. I thought that was too compressed, and I wish it would have been like, okay, we're heading for the carrier, and, Cyclone John Hamm would have, fired his reserve guys, and, you just would have seen this, juxtaposition, is Cruise going to make it? Is the enemy going to catch him? The other, friendly jets are coming. They're almost there. They're almost within range. And it could have just cut back and forth and made it a little bit more exciting. They could have had kind of like this head on, like very visual, very powerful, kind of like everyone kind of passing and, in close quarters. Then they shot down the enemy jet. I thought that could have been made a little bit more exciting. Instead, Hangman just kind of like appears out of nowhere. We knew he was coming, but he just kind of appeared out of nowhere. And I thought that was an opportunity for something very, very dramatic and visual that was just a little bit like not handled like as excitingly as it could have been.
Sure. I don't, to be honest, I didn't have a problem with that. I did have more of a problem with them not choosing Hangman on the mission. Your first point.
Yeah.
I think
it feels wrong, right?
And it's, for me, it's actually a simple fix, which would have been like outside of the jet, if they had some kind of illusion that Rooster is the better pilot, but the only thing holding him back is the fact that he always waits for the perfect opportunity. Because even Hangman says it, right? You're always waiting for the perfect opportunity, but it never comes.
Yes.
And and it could have been anything. It's like, we look at his, flying test results, and you can see that in the simulator, for example, Rooster always outscores everyone by 10 points or something. Something simple like that. I would have bought in. And then you can say, yes, we're going to use this mission to also say, hey, you know what? This isn't the simulator anymore. Stop overthinking it. Just get your ass in gear. Something simple like that.
You're absolutely right. There could have been a better way to handle that. You're right. He could have been like the simulator king on the course.
And that's why he's also in the Top Gun Academy.
Because
frankly speaking, as you noticed immediately, there's no show as to why he should be a Top Gun pilot, except for the fact that we're told he's a Top Gun pilot. Right?
Yeah.
And even when he's in the flight sequences, we don't really see him do anything that would get him to, except for that one sequence where they do that, that spiral down to the ground, which I thought was an exceptional visual.
Yeah.
Right? I thought in terms of visuals, they're both spiraling down, arguing with each other, and pull up at like 300 feet last second.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get the feeling that he is the best of the best. And frankly speaking, you don't really get that feeling from anyone except Hangman, right? And Hangman, I think, is 90% because he says it and he's so boastful about it. So just something would have been a little bit helpful. And I think what's even more egregious than all of this.
Oh, here it comes. Here's the hot take. Here's the hot take.
So we start off the movie with Ed Harris basically saying, fighter pilots are now on the way, going the way of the dodo. They are becoming old-fashioned, and we don't need you anymore. We've got unmanned aerial vehicles that can do exactly what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And then we transition almost immediately to Maverick being sent to Top Gun Academy to train pilots to do a mission that, frankly speaking, any number of drones could have done. And that, for me, was a bigger sense of cognitive dissonance, which is to say, hey, you spent the first 15 minutes of this movie explaining why fighter pilots are useless and that drones are going to replace them all. Why is this really crucial mission on behalf of NATO now being done with fighter pilots and not drones? And that, too...
Pete, that's a very good point.
Could have been a
very, very good point.
Very simple... It could have been an incredibly simple fix, which is to say, hey, we sent drones over. The drones got shot down by the SAMs, which we kept seeing about. And because of current technical prowess, they're not able to navigate the valley and the gorges as fast and react to the gorges as well as humans can. So we can't have them fly under the radar. So we have to send in humans.
Oh man, you know what? That's right. You know what? I'm gonna adjust that a little bit. You should have said at the low altitude they fly, their like radar is getting confused by like
there you go. Perfect
geography, right? And they're too low. They're not intended to fly at 100 feet. If they go higher, they're going to get shot down. They can't go low. We need it to be a manned mission. You're right. That would have been
such a simple thing that would have not negated, but it would have highlighted the need for fighter pilots, and it would have justified the use of fighter pilots. which just seemed so jarring because literally the scene before Tom Cruise gets the mission brief that they need to train fighter pilots, he's told by Ed Harris that fighter pilots are getting replaced by drones. Well, then why aren't you using drones for this mission if it's so crucial?
I'm totally with you. At any point in this movie, did you think it was going to end in a different way? Like, were you convinced, like, this is what's going to happen?
I was not expecting the heist, the all of a sudden heist sequence.
Yeah.
That entire 15 minutes blew me away. I thought that they would have just made it out to the water and then all 4 ships, and then 4 ships would have been swarmed by, or 2 of them would have been swarmed by the 5th generation fighters. I did expect the fighters to make a play into this, but I didn't expect it to be against the F-14 that they hijacked. I thought it was just going to be the F-18.
So I did not think. So I was kind of thinking a few things in real time. The first is that in retrospect, it seems stupid, but I was kind of wondering if Maverick would die, even though it's kind of like not right to kill off the main character, and especially a Tom Cruise character. It would have put such a dramatic ending.
Man. What a downer
to this story.
What a downer.
You know, a downer, but can you imagine, like, he would have just, I'm almost going to get misty just thinking about this, but just in terms of like the full circle that he's like, he would have saved Goose's son's life, sacrificing his own. You know, Rooster, who had such animosity towards Cruise, if they would have like kept that animosity at a high level, you know, seeing his, you know, father's friend save his life, if they would have kept Meg Ryan alive to be at the funeral for Cruise, that could have been such a, I mean, just imagine, there would not have been a dry eye in the cinema. That could have been one of the all-time, just not a happy ending, but like emotional endings. And that would have been, I think, really cool. Like, just for the ages, there would have been like, you know, Maverick died, you know, and that's how Maverick should die. To be honest, no one wants to see Maverick, maybe, like 90 years old, kind of riding a motorcycle. Like, he should have gone out as a hero. And I thought that would have been a super, super respectful, cool way to do it. And then there could have been a new generation. If you would have really liked, you know, Rooster and Phoenix and Hangman and Bob and Payback, Bagman, you know, they could have gone on, but I thought it would have been a very respectful ending for Maverick. Okay, so that didn't happen. Then at no point did I think Rooster would die, because of course Maverick would just be like suicidal. So then I kind of thought, I mean, there's no way. I mean, Maverick would have been just beside himself, right? So then I thought, for sure, these two are going to get stuck kind of like behind enemy lines, right? Harvey and whatever the dude's name is. And I thought they were just going to be behind enemy lines. And then there was going to be like a third. And it would have been, we got to go get these guys out. And there would have been like an easy, like, mid-credit scene or end-credit scene. And we would have seen like a new mission, you know, starring The Rock or someone, right? Where they're like, we got to go in, you know, and we got to get these guys out, right? I thought that would have been cool. I'm with you, though. I absolutely did not see the heist coming.
And it was really nice because it's the same. It was the same jet they flew in the first Top Gun, and Rooster is sitting in where Goose sat, and he's doing the same things Goose did, and he's like, "Oh, I can't do any of this stuff because I wasn't trained for it."
Yeah.
And you're right. In terms of Maverick dying, they kind of telegraphed it because, you know, they talk about how he's a dying breed. And then he has that emotional scene with Jennifer Connelly where he's just like, I'm not going to leave you. I don't want to leave through windows anymore. And you're just like, and then, you know, you can imagine that at the funeral scene, it would have been her at the funeral. And it would have just been like but I think that would have worked if this were a type of movie like Saving Private Ryan, which is to say like a more grisly, true to life, you know, drama versus a summer blockbuster, which, you know, the ultimate thing of a summer blockbuster is it's also got to be a feel good movie at the end of the day. And there's really not
does.
much more feeling good than you can have than to see Jennifer Connelly and Tom Cruise in a Spitfire that actually does belong to Tom Cruise in real life, flying around.
Oh, good trivia.
Flying off into the sunset. Literally flying off into the sunset.
I think you and I should, on a separate episode then, Pete, we should do a debate club. And I think we should debate the ending. Because I absolutely agree. This is a summer blockbuster. It is Tom Cruise. You do want that feel-good moment where everyone is laughing and hugging. That is important for the audience to leave on that note. But I have to say, there is something powerful about the main character dying as a hero in a really, really respectful way. That would have been like just an ending that you never forget. This ending, I feel like it's a forgettable ending. But yes, there's a handshake between Bagman and Rooster, and their landing gear was cut off, and then Cruise and Cyclone saluted each other, and that was all good. And then he kissed Jennifer Connelly. It's good, but we're going to forget that. If Cruise died in a battle saving Rooster, that would have been iconic for the next 25 years. That would have been like the model for a dramatic, sad ending, right? Almost like, remember when Bruce Willis died in Armageddon?
Yeah. Okay. So let me counter that by saying that I don't disagree with you. It would have certainly been iconic. But when you think about summer blockbusters like this, and when you think of movies like this, right? You say that it would have been something to remember, but I still remember the ending of Top Gun 1. That's essentially exactly what happened at the end of Top Gun 1 too, right? They're all hugging and shaking hands on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Middle Eastern waters that they
Indian Ocean.
In the Indian Ocean, right? So it's the same kind of ending. And in fact, this is, very much a parallel to that. So I don't know about it being more memorable or less memorable. I agree with you. It would have been certainly a different way to go. I think it would have been too bittersweet for what this kind of movie is. This movie is all about look, it's about Tom Cruise. It's about his charismatic personality. It's about a fighter pilot who somehow always manages to defy the odds. And it's not the mentality you want coming into or out of this movie. You don't want to come out of this movie feeling satisfied but having a bittersweet ending. You want to come out of this movie like, oh, I'm satisfied. That's great. And I hate saying this. Yeah. I hate saying this.
Oh, say it. Say it.
It also opens the door to potentially a Top Gun 3. And I don't want to say that because I don't want to see a Top Gun 3. I really don't. And again, not because I didn't like this movie, for exactly the exact same opposite reasons. I don't want to see a 65-year-old Maverick convincing us that he's still able to fly jet fighter planes as well as or better than 20-year-olds.
I know. And the only way to do that.
That was a real stretch in this movie. At some point, especially when you're talking about humans, I get it. The guy basically was born in a cockpit and is going to die in a cockpit. But your reaction times go down with age. Like, it's a necessity. And he's not, in that sense, the Admiral Ed Harris wasn't wrong. You cannot compare a 65-year-old fighter pilot to a 20-year-old one, let alone to a computer that can process, at the speed of light.
Well, actually, that's what I was thinking in the first, kind of the opening scene. I kind of thought, that's how I see Tom Cruise retiring. You're like Maverick retiring. He doesn't live in an apartment. He lives in an
aircraft hangar,
airplane hangar. And he's, just, working on his plane and working on his motorcycle. Like, I get it. Like, they pulled him out of retirement, That's kind of what I thought. And then once I saw him being like the test pilot, I was kind of like, for like what? Like for Boeing? For like a private company? And then it was like, the Air Force. I'm like, you don't have time to dwell on it in the cinema. But I was for a split second, like I was processing, like, is that really the guy who's the test pilot? Do they take like the old retired guy and say, here's the newest technology, you should try it? Don't they usually take like the youngest guy and say like, you're the test pilot? I kind of felt like, and I don't know if that's, for me, I don't raise that as a plot hole. That was just kind of like I don't think that's really right. But anyway, it kind of worked out, but I hear you. I think that we've kind of gotten to the point where Tom Cruise in real life is what, 59, 58?
Something like that. Something like that. He's approaching 60, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely above 55, but I think he's not 60. So, I mean, I think we can all say, like, that's not really when the Navy has their fighter pilots. Yes, Maverick is, unique
he's an
in that
outlier,
sense.
certainly.
But yeah, he's an outlier.
I mean, let's put it this way. I preferred
outlier.
this than to see him like flying like a Delta or United airliner who, he's retired from the Air Force, so he starts working for United. Like, you don't want to see that either, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of the other way that this could have gone, right? Which is
he's totally out of the game.
He was retired. Yeah. He was living in a hangar, and they're like, hey, we got to do this mission, and we got to use F-18s because, I don't know, their radar isn't picked up or something, right? If it gets shot down, there's no sensitive 5th generation technology the enemy can get. So we don't have anyone who remembers how to fly this plane. You've got to teach the team how to fly this plane. That's also like an alternate storyline that could have, been manufactured, right?
Yeah. So I think this is now the portion maybe where, we get to the typical films and stuff nitpicking. Let's not forget that, forget about the major things. Forget about the minor things, because ultimately, regardless of, plot contrivances, which are what these are.
But that's the beauty of this movie, right? Or really all cinema, which is until you go through the storyline and you pick up these points, and some of the things we don't usually pick up the good things they've done, but we can. Like I thought Jennifer Connelly, Penny was a throwback to the Admiral's daughter.
We never saw her, but we heard she was referenced
to.
That's right.
Right? Yes, she was referenced to. I thought that was a great throwback. And those are the types of, I think, like very clever things you usually see from like Marvel, so I thought that was exceptional. I thought, John Hamm's character, how they kind of, he talked down to Tom Cruise. I thought that was exceptional. I thought that, Warlock was great. I thought that, that team coming together kind of saying, hey, like, we're the best of the best. Who could possibly teach us anything? I thought there were a lot of very, very well thought out elements in here. There's a few that obviously you could deconstruct either way. I thought that the football scene on the beach, I mean, if you must do a scene, right? I mean, you obviously can't recreate the iconic soft porn
beach
volleyball scene,
that's right?
But I thought that was actually like a kind of cool way to do it, Like I was okay with that. And it taught me something, in terms of like you're playing offense and defense at the same time. That was kind of like a little bit clever. Like overall, I thought it was a very, very well thought out movie, and it's hard to come back 36 years later and create something almost equally iconic. And I thought they did a
reasonably close job of it.
Reasonably close job of doing that. Yeah.
I was really, I have to say, I walked out of the cinema and I must say my first thought was wow. And my second thought was I need to rethink my summer blockbuster rankings list, because this movie I think is going to have way wider appeal than a superhero movie. Yeah. Because the superhero movies, don't get me wrong, they do incredibly well and they make a ton of money.
Yeah.
But the appeal is not necessarily, cross-generational. And it's certainly not amongst like all demographics. This covers a lot of demographics. You're going to get the older people who are, our age and older, who saw the original Top Gun and loved it. You're going to get the younger people who are going to be in there to see the Miles Tellers, etc. And all of these young guys also great action sequences. You're going to get women and men alike. I don't think this was a movie targeted at men. I don't think this was a movie targeted at women. I think this is a movie that really is going to skew really well across the board.
It's a summer blockbuster.
Which is why I think that it's a quintessential blockbuster. It ticks kind of all the boxes. And typically speaking, superhero movies do really well. And obviously we know that, right? But I think they typically tend to skew more towards certain parts of the demographics, and I think this is going to cover a lot more of them. I'm not going to say it's the number one box office movie, and I'm certainly not changing my list, but I do think this is going to do better than I had anticipated in the cinema. And I hope it does. I really hope it does, because I very much enjoyed the movie. I thought it was great, and if you can, forget about the plot contrivances. Those little minor speed bumps are exactly that. They're speed bumps. Once you hit them, you forget about them, you move on. You have a great time in this.
I'm happy that they held this back.
Oh, yeah.
Because this was supposed to be
2019.
Released kind of like during the... Yeah, I'm really happy that they held this movie back. Because I think it would have been really tragic had this gone direct to video. I really think that would have been a disservice to this video. It had to be in cinemas. It had to be in cinemas when people would actually go. It's too important to film history to allow this to not be seen by a large audience.
And that is 100% kudos to Tom Cruise, who basically told Paramount that if you ever want to work with me, you're going to wait. All right. And good on him, because he bet on himself. And it was the right bet to make.
It absolutely was the right bet to make. Who do you think is going to be a star from this movie? I mean,
so Miles Teller already is in that. He's very highly regarded. Glenn Powell.
I think Glenn Powell. I think Monica Barbaro, right, who played Phoenix.
I think she's going to be the one that everyone's going to look towards now, because of all of them, I think she's the one I knew the least about. But and maybe this is also because she was the only real female lead in the movie. Yeah. But I think that there's going to be certainly an element of, you see the confidence in her, you see her physicality, you see a lot of that. I think she's going to come out in terms of the one with the highest rise and growth potential. I think it's going to be her.
Yeah, I mean, the other folks, to be honest, we didn't really get to know Bob. We didn't really get to know Payback. We didn't see anything from Fanboy. There's someone who's credited as Omaha, Halo, Harvard, Yale, Coyote.
I don't know any of those people. Yeah.
None of those, honestly. I think Coyote had something. They just didn't have enough screen time or lines. And that's kind of strange, because the original Top Gun, I mean, there's so many. Maybe we should talk about the naming conventions, or the call signs, right? I mean,
I've forgotten. There's so many of them that I can't even remember.
Merlin, Jester, Wolfman, Goose, Maverick, Iceman. Who is with Ice? I can't remember. There was Sundown, right? I felt like there were more names that you actually knew from that class. And here it was, of course, Rooster, Phoenix, Hangman, Bob, right? Kind of those three.
And that's kind of it.
But Phoenix, Phoenix had, I say Hangman, Bagman, was really the only person who had a personality. Phoenix was just very, very confident and good. Not too much from her, Her plane once hit a bunch of geese, birds, and, kind of went down. Bob was, kind of
the bookish
geeky
pilot that's actually the weapons expert.
And that's it, The others, I can't remember any memorable lines, There was Slider, remember? It was Iceman and Slider, right?
Sure. I can't remember too many.
So anyway, I think that they did not do enough to justify a third, and I hope that's intentional, because I fully agree with you. A third would be too much. Just like Godfather, just like so many other things. Rocky.
Yeah,
2 is great.
Like, I didn't even expect a second.
Yeah.
They did a phenomenal job with the
Yeah.
second, but maybe at this point, at least,
Yeah.
we certainly don't need to see
Yeah.
a second one. A third
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe in 36 years from now, when we're doing episode 9,900, we'll be thinking about watching the third one if they ever make it. But
I mean, I'm looking at the original IMDb. It's funny that they've just got their call signs. There was Tim Robbins was Merlin, right? Tom Skerritt was Viper. John Stockwell, Cougar. Rick Rossovich was Slider. Whip Hubley was Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
There was Stinger, Sundown, Wolfman, Jester. Goose
So
and
I
Maverick.
read that all the actors got to choose their own call signs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. When they got the roles, they were allowed to choose their own call signs.
Oh,
so
man.
that was actually a Miles Teller decision to call himself Rooster instead of Goose. And that's why I like Miles Teller.
I think Rooster is exceptional. I think Phoenix is good. John Hamm was Cyclone. I mean, Bob, okay, it was clever. Payback, Hangman, yeah, I didn't really see anything. Fanboy, I thought Fanboy was very bad. Like,
funny, but again, the problem is that, I think what you're alluding to was that at least in the first Top Gun, even though they were all nameless, even if they were iconic or not, is they all had more roles, so they were distinctive. Here, outside of the 3 or 4 top of them, the remaining 8, not distinctive at all.
You're
like,
right.
I couldn't, if you put 14 pilots on a lineup and said 12 of these were in Top Gun, I would pick out the 4 main guys correctly, and the rest of them, it would be a crapshoot.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem. And it's not to say that because they look generic. No, it's just because they didn't have anything to do in the movie. They were just there to basically be shot down by Tom Cruise in the training montage, to do a bunch of push-ups, and then to basically not be selected for the mission. Even on the aircraft carrier, the people who went there, it was just really, we only saw Hangman. We didn't even see Hangman's wingman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's actually one of the interesting things about the difference in the aircraft, right? Because the original Top Gun, there was the pilot, the navigator.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that's super cool. Here it was, and to be honest, maybe this is a thing, but it didn't really make sense to me. You need one guy to shoot the bombs, and you need a separate plane to spot the target. I mean, is that really efficient? Is that really the way that it works? Like, you can't have the same plane spot the target and shoot the missile?
Like, I get it in humans. So they do that, like in the army, you have one that's a laser guider, points the laser pointer, and the other one, he paints the target, and the other one fires the weapon. That's fine. But in a jet, when all you're doing literally is pressing buttons, and I get that one of the missile bays would be with the laser, but I imagine there's more than one, right? You could fire other weapons. But again,
it just seemed I mean, again, that's kind of why I was hoping that Rooster would be like, look, dude, you're not good enough to be a pilot, but you're very good at, labeling targets. So, let's change your role. And
then once again, this is small things that they could have kind of dealt with if they had done the drones, if they had involved drones.
Yeah.
Where they say, or what we can say is, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to fly the drones out there. They're going to paint the targets for you. Because
that's a very good point, because remember, they had that other surveillance plane, right?
Yeah.
At I don't know how many thousands
50,000
feet, right?
feet or 100,000 feet, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like this is not a real technical problem. And even if there are technical problems in real life, since when has a movie ever been
certainly not this kind of movie, right? Exactly.
Faithful to technology.
But that's what I mean. That's what I think. Those are the small kinds of details that would have elevated. And you're right. That's the kind of thing that superhero movies nowadays are very good at. They're exceptional at looking at the smaller details.
Yeah.
And it's because I think it's also, the reality is that audiences are smarter now.
Yeah.
They're also a little bit more discerning.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have taken more than 1-2 minutes of screen time max to justify the use of human pilots versus drones.
Yeah.
And a very plausible reason at that. And even if it weren't plausible, but at least something to allay those, concerns that we have as viewers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say Films and Stuff has viewers. Again, I think unless you and I go into it, the vast majority of people either are not going to pick it up or they're not going to care. But I mean, that's the purpose of us doing this talk, is to highlight some of those things, which they're not like goofs. They're just things that are little blips that we would
just minor inconsistencies that would have otherwise been, stellar.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I have to repeat this because it's worth repeating.
Yes.
A phenomenal movie overall. Highly, highly, highly recommended. And, if you couldn't figure it out from the last hour of us gushing praise at it, it is by and far the clearest must go to the cinema to watch movie that we have seen certainly this year. And I would even say over the last couple of years, because obviously, we've been affected by the pandemic. But this movie is, I think, going to be the movie, and I think even more so than Doctor Strange, regardless of box office, I think this is the movie that really confirms the cinema is going to be back.
Can Disney learn anything from this movie? And we're going to get into Disney, I think, in our next episode. We've got to talk about Obi-Wan. But can Disney learn anything from this, right? Because it's been 36 years between these movies. The first Top Gun, as iconic as an iconic movie can be, right? Almost any list of the top 10 influential or iconic movies should somehow have Top Gun somewhere on that list. This could have gone very badly had they not done it perfectly, right? I mean, we've as you mentioned, we've gushed praise for over an hour now. Had they done this wrong, it would have just been not just
40 minutes of us lambasting them.
I mean, but
they would have ruined it.
But it wouldn't have just been a bad film. It would have undermined the original Tom Cruise's career, Val Kilmer's career, the myth of Goose. Goose wasn't even in this movie, and his legacy is on the line. So, I mean, the amount of risk in remaking this movie was huge. What can Disney learn from this?
So more than Disney, I think this is specifically a lesson for someone like Kathleen Kennedy, right? Who has gone on the record to say we shouldn't recast legacy characters because people are going to have a problem with that. I would say, hey, by the way, again, wrong lesson learned from your mistakes.
Yeah.
This movie, while it didn't recast, I get that it didn't recast Maverick, it certainly took on an old franchise and zhuzhed it up and revamped it in such a way to make it modern, to make it applicable to today's audiences in a way that's still respectful to the original and still leaves a path forward. It's I think it would be very difficult, for example, to remake a modern version of Rambo. I don't think impossible, but I think it would be very difficult, right? Yeah. Because that movie, it dealt with a lot of social issues that, especially in the 80s, you didn't really want to talk about, and certainly not in the cinema.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just go out and say, let's find another actor who kind of looks like Sylvester Stallone or has the body of Sylvester Stallone, and let's throw him in a movie and call it Rambo, whatever, instead, something else. And that's, I think, the problem that Lucasfilms and specifically the leadership at Lucasfilms have, which is to say, hey, how do we redo this movie? And I don't think the goal should be to redo movies. I think the goal should be to look at the movies that you have in your catalog. How do we revitalize it in a way that makes sense?
I think that's right. And I think there's also something we can take from this. It's okay for characters to be a little bit vulnerable. Val Kilmer, Iceman, so vulnerable, and it didn't damage his legacy at all. It made it, I think, better. The same thing with
even Maverick.
Maverick was vulnerable, he's a guy who obviously has, they ask him, like, how come you're still a captain? He's like, it's one of life's mysteries. They're like, we're not kidding. Like, why? And he's got his own little crisis. He doesn't have a lot of money, right? His credit card gets bounced at the bar. He's and he's like, probably has like a little bit of self-doubt in terms of, like, I'm not really dating anyone. I don't have any kids. Like, my best friend died. His wife died. I'm estranged from his son. I just got fired from another job. Like, where am I in this world? And and I think it's embrace the vulnerability of characters as they get older, and maybe Lucasfilms has never really done that because they thought that their characters are too valuable and they can't show that. But for me, that's one of the endearing things. If you can do it, I mean, you don't have to make them like crazy old people, but you can, in an endearing, respectful way, show that, look, they're older now. They have some challenges. They're still amazing at their core, but they're not the same person that you remember them to be that when they were like at the peak of their powers, right?
I will say, though, and we're going to definitely talk about this on our next episode.
Oh, yeah.
With Obi-Wan.
Oh, yeah.
They do show a very vulnerable Obi-Wan.
Oh, yeah.
And so it may, and again, I think this strongly comes down to the creative side at Disney, which is to say, hey, you're absolutely right, Ethan, we should be making these seemingly invulnerable characters from the past and showing people what's going on really behind the Jedi robes, right? And we definitely see that in episodes 1 and 2, which again, we're not going to spoil now. We're going to talk about that in the next episode.
I can't wait until the next episode. As much fun as I've had on this episode.
Indeed. So, anything else we missed out on Top Gun?
No, I think we covered it. Let's take care to follow this film and let's see how it does at the box office. This is the first weekend I think it's opening. Let's see how it does, and let's see how this stacks up with some of the other iconic films. Because I agree with you. I think this is going to have a really, really great summer ahead of it. Yeah,
and it's Memorial Day weekend in the U.S., so it's kind of like the perfect storm for an excellent, showing in the box office. It's a great kind of movie. It's got a lot of patriotism, a lot of America gung ho. America first kind of vibes from it in a good way, not in a bad way. It's got the perfect amount of of nostalgia without being cheesy. I think that anyone who goes into this, whether they're a fan of the first movie or not a fan of the first movie or haven't seen the first movie, are going to enjoy it.
Pete, I appreciate your time. I'm so happy that we got to talk about this. I mean, it was something that you and I have been looking forward to for ages. And I was so nervous that it would not turn out, it would not meet my expectations. And I have to say, I had huge expectations, so high. They were absolutely met and even slightly exceeded. And for me, I'm just thrilled to the core because of that.
Super, super pleased. I imagine everybody on here will be as well. So go out, watch it. Do yourselves a favor, watch it in the cinema. Do Tom Cruise a favor. Go see it.
And send us your comments. Tell us what you think.
Yes, you can reach out to us, aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com or on Twitter @F&S Podcast.
We're here for you. Okay, my friend, we will speak on our next episode where we break down Disney's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Indeed. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.